In this lecture, we're going to get set up with the Unity game engine and the VS Code IDE. Now, when it comes to Unity, we always try and record using the latest stable release of Unity. And at the start of each lecture, whenever we're in the environment, we'll list which version we're using on the title slide. So as an example from this lecture, at time of recording, the latest stable version was Unity 2021.1. However, the version used through the rest of the course may be different, so do double check the title slides before each lecture. As a side note, I would strongly recommend using the same version as the instructor throughout the course. This way, you'll be able to follow along exactly with what they're doing. This will help stop you getting tripped up by any potential visual changes in the editor, as well as any code changes behind the scenes. And talking of code, we're going to be using the Visual Studio Code IDE throughout this course. The reason we're using this particular environment over any other is really twofold. The first is that the interface is very similar between Mac, Windows, and Linux, so we can be relatively confident that what we're showing you on screen is roughly what you're going to be seeing on your screen. And the second option is because this is a very lightweight IDE and is very easy to use. However, if you're a more seasoned coder and you have a preferred IDE, then do go ahead and use that instead. Now, in addition to just using Visual Studio Code, we are also going to be adding some extensions to this to make it work a bit more nicely with Unity. And the two extensions we're going to be installing are C# by Microsoft and Unity Code Snippets. So with that information out of the way, I think it's time for a challenge. I'd like you to get your environment set up. Go ahead and download and install Unity, and if possible, try and use the same version as the instructor for the best learning journey. Then go ahead and install Visual Studio Code or an editor of your choice. And once that's finished installing, go ahead and add the C# and Unity Code Snippets extensions. So pause the video now and give that a go. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully you've now got everything installed, but if you haven't and you faced a few problems, then let me walk you through some of the process. First of all, let's go ahead and download Unity. So here I am on their website at unity.com/download. And at the time of recording, this is what the page looks like, but this may change in the future. However, somewhere on here, we'll have a download button. And in this case, it's at the top. So we've got a download Windows and download other versions button. And if we scroll down ever so slightly, we'll have links to download the Unity Hub for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Now, I'm on a Windows machine, so I'm going to click on Download for Windows. But if you're on a different platform, then select the one that's right for you. And the reason we're installing the Unity Hub here and not a specific Unity version directly is because the Hub allows us to manage all of our different versions in one central place. With that downloaded, let's go ahead and click on it to open it up. This will then take us through the license agreement and a very standard software install process. And once you're done, go ahead and open up the Unity Hub and you should be presented with a hub that looks something very similar to this. Down on the left-hand side, we have a few different tabs. We have one for all of our projects, which are all of our Unity projects that we've created. And right at the bottom, we have our installs, which are all the Unity versions we've had installed on our machine. Now, if you're coming in fresh, then the projects folder and the installs folder is most likely going to be very blank. So let's start by adding a new install to our installs list. Up in the top right, we have an add button. So if we click on that, it will bring us up the different versions of Unity that we can go and install. For the most part, we'd recommend using the Unity recommended release, which is usually the previous year's version, and it's under LTS, which is long-term support. But to try and keep us up to date and current as we can, rather than using the recommended releases for the courses, we tend to use the latest official release. So in this case, we've got Unity 2021.1.25. This may very well be different for the rest of the course, so don't worry about following exactly the version I'm using in this lecture, and instead use the version that's being taught throughout the rest of the course. As an example though, if I were to pick the Unity 2021 build here, the 0.25 F1, to install it, we just need to hit next. This will then bring us up a few modules that we can add to our build. So we have some dev tools like the Microsoft Visual Studio Community, which is another IDE which we're not going to be using for the course. And we also have some platform build support for different things like Android, iOS, Linux, Mac, and so on. By default, for a Windows build, we have the WebGL build support and Windows build support enabled. So I'm going to leave those as is, but I'm not going to worry about any of the other support options in this list. With our modules selected, if we go ahead and hit done, that will then install that version of Unity for us. With everything installed, we can now see it in our install list. And if we decide later that we actually wanted some of those additional build support modules added into our project, then we can come back here to the install in question. And if we click on this little 3-button hamburger icon at the top here, we can select Add Modules, which will bring this module window back up. Here we can then say add iOS and Android build support and go through that install process again. I'm not going to worry about that though. And instead, let's just go ahead and now create a brand new project. So for this, we need to be on the Projects tab. And up in the top right corner here, we have a New button. If we click on that, it'll open up a nice project creation window here, where we have the option to select various templates, depending on whether our game is going to be 2D or 3D, or if we're using one of the various render pipeline options. Then over on the right, we can name our project, so New Unity Project by default, and give it a save location. And to create our project, we just need to click on Create. This will then create our project and open it for us. Although the first time you do this, it may take just a little bit of time to go through the motions. But once it's ready, we'll be presented with a blank Unity project. With Unity set up now, it's time to install Visual Studio Code. And we can find a link to their download by going to code.visualstudio.com/download. And we'll also have links to these different download pages in the resources attached to this lecture, so do feel free to check that out rather than searching for yourself. And on this page, we again are presented with a download option for Windows, Linux, and Mac. So again, I'm going to pick the Windows option. That will then start our download process. And once that's finished downloading, we can go through the install process. I'm not going to worry about doing that on camera though. I'm sure you've got this install process down by now. But once we're done, we need to once again head back over into Unity. And if we go up to the Edit menu and then down to our Preferences, if we open this up and head over to the External Tools on the left menu bar here, the very first option in here is our External Script Editor. Now, I've already got this set up as Visual Studio Code, but if you have another IDE already installed, or if you're using a different coding environment, then you can select that from the list. I'm going to stick with Visual Studio Code for now though. We can then close down our Preferences window, and to test that this is all working, I'm going to create a new script. I'm going to right click in our bottom project window here. I'm going to go up to Create, and then up to C# Script. I'm going to leave it as a new mono behavior for now, and just double click that to open it up. This presents us with the script that we clicked on, but what we're really interested in is inside Visual Studio Code, we want to add our 2 extensions. Over on the very far left, we'll have a couple of options, and the very bottom one is our extensions. Here we can already see I've got a few different extensions installed, but if you don't have any, then just in the search box, the first one we want to look for is C# by Microsoft. So that's this top one here. And if we click on it in the sidebar, then we'll get their main page. At the very top, we'll have a couple of options, and I've got an uninstall button, meaning it's already installed. But if you don't, then this will be an install button. So go ahead and click on that and run through that process. With that set up, we then need to find our Unity code snippets. So let's search for that. And again, it's this top one by Kleber Silver that we want. So again, click on that in the panel. And then on the main page, we want to look for the install button. And the reason we're adding these 2 extensions is to make the coding experience a lot nicer. So if we head back to the new mono behavior script as an example, those 2 extensions will allow us to use IntelliSense. So as we start typing something, for instance, the instantiate method, It will pop up in our list and try and guess what we're trying to type, and it'll also give us this handy tooltip to show us the different overloaded versions of our methods. So congratulations on getting Unity and Visual Code all set up, and you're now in a good place to jump into the rest of the course.